What's up, guys? And we got Dustin dancing to the music. Yes. What's up, man? How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm a little exhausted. This has been a long. Seems like one of the longest weeks of my life, but you get those weeks sometimes.
Gosh.
Yeah, yeah. But it's almost over. I actually get off this weekend, so I'm excited. Um, so I'll have Saturday and Sunday to actually rest and enjoy myself a little bit. So looking
Well,
forward to that.
good.
Yeah, man. So one of the things I was thinking about this week, because I've been encountering this a lot, and I think we may have talked about it or at least touched on it last episode or someplace I did or we did or somebody did. I don't know. Is this new Christianity, the new hybrid Christianity? Um, and I gotta it's been disturbing me quite a bit lately because um, the idea is that it's harmless. It's this new hybrid where they don't have the same views of the traditional Christianity. They don't hold to the "you're worthless, you're no good, you're a sinner, worthy of nothing." They redefine God and make him in such a way that he's just a great, loving being. They choose Jesus and make up whatever they want about him. Um, and so the idea is, well, we don't need to worry about that because they actually have a form of Christianity that's good and beneficial. But it's been disturbing me because I personally am finding it to actually be a deception, not only to others but to those who are holding to that hybrid form itself. Um, there's so for starters, that form of Christianity is still rooted in faith. And when we say, well, that's no big deal, it promotes the idea that faith is still an acceptable way by which we can determine things. And if we say faith is okay and a way to determine by faith, by the way, let me just define that for a second. Well, let me finish that sentence and I'll define faith. Faith is a way that we can determine things. You do realize that there is nothing you can't believe and determine is true by faith. Like you literally can choose anything. It doesn't freaking matter. It can be that white people are superior to black people. You believe that's true because you're fake, because your God told you, and that's what you end up believing. It can be that some races are better than others. It can be that that racism is good. It can be that men are superior to women. You can come down to all sorts of things because if God, your God, says so, there's nothing that stops it from being true to you because you just have faith. Um, this is my concern with promoting faith as a means by which we can actually determine reality and being okay with that, and not actually helping people to be like, listen, man, that's just not a good way to think. You don't get to just make up a God and make up a man named Jesus and say that because it's Jesus, it suddenly becomes superior to the way anybody else lives. And so we have to submit to now what your Jesus is because you think your Jesus is better than everybody else's Jesus. When in fact, I don't even want to look at I don't care about a guy named Jesus. I have my own morals and you have your own morals. And we try to figure out an objective morality together so we can play the game together and figure out the best way to live. But you throw this Jesus into the mix and now it becomes some objective figure out there, and it's whoever designs him. And so when I say faith, I know there's a lot of controversy over this term faith. I think a lot of Christians think that what they mean by faith is just trust or confidence. I have confidence in God because I've seen all the things that he's done. I have confidence in Jesus because he died and rose again. They look at the biblical text and they see the things that have happened. They say, I have confidence in this God because there's no reason not to trust him. He is a trustworthy being. That's the way they think they use it. But when you start to really dig down, you have to even question right out the gate, well, what reason do you even have to trust that the Bible is true? Why are you using the Bible as a source to determine that you can trust this God or this Jesus? and they often don't really pay attention to the Hebrews 11:1 definition that faith is the evidence of things unseen, the assurance of things. Faith is not faith is part of the evidence that we have for God. It's just faith is the evidence. That's it. That's your entire method of reasoning. It's faith determines reality. Period. And if you live by that kind of model, then how dare you have the right to tell a mass murderer that what they have faith in is not correct? You don't. You cannot dictate what is right and what is wrong for anybody who is doing things when you're living by a model of faith. And you can't technically do that either without faith. But having faith, having Jesus or God or religion doesn't resolve the difficulty of morality. It doesn't just fix it because you've decided there's a transcendent standard. It actually makes it worse and more difficult because now you're throwing in middlemans everywhere where you just get to say, well, mine told me this is objective truth. It's transcendent. And the other guy's saying the same thing. And everybody has a transcendent standard. And you really, none of you get the right to tell the other one that theirs isn't right or that theirs isn't plausible or that we should reconsider it because God told them. How do you have the right to dictate anything if you're living by this idea of a transcendent standard by faith? It's not just trust. It's faith in faith is what you've amounted to. You have confidence, the first layer of faith, this idea that you're trusting in something, but what you're trusting is this idea of faith being the only evidence you have to substantiate your claim that a God exists or that Jesus is good or that Allah is good or Muhammad is great or whatever it is you're believing, or that blacks are better than whites or whatever. You can just literally dictate anything by faith. And it's very, very concerning because you really, so as humanists, we can get together and we can say, I can say, let's just say and believe me, by no means do I believe it, but let's just say that I have a morality and I say, subjectively blacks are better than whites or whites are better than blacks or whatever. You can then challenge that and you can push back and we can try to figure out some means by which we define morality. And we can say that, in the way I define morality, the best, bring about the greatest possible benefit and the least possible harm to all humanity and to all creatures, I guess, in general. And so once you agree to that, then you can figure out what the rules are to play that game. And you can say, okay, if we're looking at the greatest possible benefit, then obviously saying one race is better than another is not bringing all benefit equally. So you now have countered and you've demonstrated me, not by faith, but by logic and reason, why my thinking was incorrect based on our agreement of morality. So you can have those sorts of discussions when you are living by a humanist model where you're not basing everything on faith. But when you have faith, you can't do that. And so I see this hybrid form of Christianity trying to make a new God. It's really what it's become. It's like they're still holding on to the term Christianity, but they've invented an entirely new God, and this God's now going to end up transcending time because it's just another religion altogether. Basically, it's like Christianity 2.0 is what it is. But it doesn't solve the problem. It only exasperates it, and really causes me a little bit of angst here because I don't want this world. I don't want to live in a world where we base things on faith. It's a dangerous way to live. And so I'm not loving this not only idea of the hybrid Christian, but also the acceptance of it. I think it's a problem. And so anyway, I've said a lot, but I've laid down where I'm going with this, and I just want to give you a chance to throw your feedback now.
Oh man, that's a whole lot. Well, who when you say it's causing you angst, not only the new definition but its acceptance, who are you talking about?
Well, I think in general, I think that there are a lot of people that I interact with, even in agnosticism and atheism, that say, I'm not worried about that version of Christianity. They're not a problem. I hear that.
Oh, okay. All right, I see.
Because they're not promoting those same issues that we have with Christianity.
Yeah, I understand. There is a far more black and white demarcation in the Christianity you and I are used to versus this new hybrid form of Christianity. And so that's why some people see it as more palatable because it doesn't make the doctrinal claims or the theological claims that what you and I are used to made. Which
and I think you're right. And I just want to interrupt real quick, just to throw one thought at that. And I said earlier, I think it's a deception, and this is what I meant by that. So
well, it is, and I think it is a deception, but it's I don't think it's a malicious or an intentional one. I just think when you begin to ask questions, it becomes one.
Right.
Because I mean, I've had a lot of interactions with the people you're talking about, these hybrid Christians. Just in this last week alone, I've had 3 particular pretty lengthy ones, and they are very, very ambivalent until you begin to unravel their worldview. Then it becomes there are some lines in the sand drawn, and they do begin to refer to or resort to the same methods that the Christians previous to them would have resorted to. um, for instance, absolute claims from Scripture and things like that. When you first talk to some of these hybrid Christians, they don't care anything about the Bible really. They don't care about whether these stories are literal or allegorical or metaphorical or historical. They don't care anything about that until you begin to unravel their thinking. Then suddenly they will begin to reference the Bible, and I will bring it back around to, well, you earlier you said you didn't really care about that. And so they don't until. So I see what you're saying. Um,
But even beyond that, like when I say it's a deception, like the idea that one of the things that they pride themselves on as well, the one thing we don't do, like the rest of Christians, is talk about how degrading people, degrading the Bible. God does not, think you're worthless worm, worthy of nothing. He doesn't ever think that you're insufficient. He thinks you're good enough in any way, shape, or form. Like they try to preach that message, but then turn around and say, even the universalists will make a case that one of the reasons Jesus died and was for the benefit of giving us an example of how to be like him and to be able to trust him, because without him, we don't know the best way to live. And as soon as I hear that phrase, it hits me and I'm like, I'm sorry, did you just say you're not good enough without knowing his way? You don't know without following him. Like it's an immediate reversal, because suddenly you aren't good enough. Suddenly you can't figure things out without this Jesus. That's why he came. That's why he died, was to give you some example, because without him, you're incapable of figuring this out. You need him to
well,
be the best you
or
can be,
insufficient.
or insufficient. But even so, like language of insufficiency is one of my greatest concerns with religion in general. It's one of the most degrading things that it did to me. Now, granted, if you're getting it pounded in your head all the time how evil you are as a sinner, I get it. That's worse. But nonetheless, it's a deceptive way that faith really does in a God really does still demonstrate the insufficiency of a human being, because without this God, you aren't enough. And that, like, I hate, like, I'm highly like against any language anymore that speaks of us not being good enough without some other being in our life. Like that disturbs me, and I think it's one of the greatest causes of depression and suicide that has been brought into our world, and it's caused by religion.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you on that. I do think that I do think the idea of teaching a human being that they are not enough in and of themselves is abuse. And all forms of religion do that in some way, shape, or form. They teach a person that they are not enough in and of themselves to be um, acceptable to themselves first and to others. And so that is dangerous. I do think what's going on with this hybrid form of Christianity is that the Christianity you and I were used to is dissolving. It is. I think it's going to be a thing of antiquity and not too far the distant future, because there's just way too much information available now. There are way too many people jettisoning that belief system, and it's becoming public. And so people are really they're leaving it behind. It's I mean, it's for me, I now see it already as a thing of the past. The people like the Sam Frost and the Don Prestons and the John MacArthurs, that's a dying generation. And I don't think the next generation will look anything like them at all. And I think that form of Christianity that you and I left in the next generation is going to be a thing of the past. I really do. I think this hybrid form of Christianity will be the new Christianity, but I think even that model is in transition because I think what is happening is at a far quicker rate than most people anticipated, even 4 to 5 years earlier. I think all forms of that religion are becoming unpalatable almost in every way. I even think the Jesus myth is going to unravel people's thinking over the next year or two because there, books like Lee Strobel's Case for Christ, which is just such a freaking joke now. I remember reading that and being overwhelmed. Oh, God, Lee Strobel's amazing. And now I look back at that book and think, what a piece of trash. Any real scholar would look at that book and laugh and think, what a joke, man. People take this serious. So Jesus, the literary Jesus, the biblical Jesus as a historical figure is, man, I think that is the next big thing that's going to become a massive disruption. I think everybody is going to begin to realize that there was no literary Jesus at all. It's not even a historical possibility. And so I think what is happening is there is a transition now to these people who call themselves nons. And even that classification in the next 4 to 5 years, I think that will become even more ambiguous and they're going to call themselves something different to where I really think, Alan, I really do, man. I think Christianity is going to become a thing of the past. There will be a few remnants of people that still cling to it, and we'll have to deal with the, oh, I got a car today. God is so good. Look at him blessing me. I'm highly favored crap. But I think by and large, we're going to see these massive churches. They're going to go bankrupt, I think, or what they're going to do is you're going to see a whole nother form of a very mystic kind of more Eastern looking religion develop. Because think about this, man. Let's go back as far. Well, I mean, look at what happened at the time of Martin Luther. Look at the difference between Christianity previous to Martin Luther and Christianity after. It began to evolve. And you had Lutheranism and Episcopalianism and the Anabaptist and the Baptist. You had all these things begin to happen and it began to shape and change. Then you had the Enlightenment period. Look at what happened then. It began to change and you had the big, a big bolstering of the Puritan movement with Spurgeon and guys like that, right? Presbyterianism. Then, man, in the 20th century, all of a sudden, it becomes this consumer-driven model, and the Willow Creek and the Saddleback churches, they jacked everything up. Everybody wanted to be like them. Well, if you want to be like us, you have to peddle this product, Jesus, to the consumer, the parishioner, the layperson, in a different way. You can't do it in this stodgy hymnal kind of thing. You need worship music now, and you need this and you need that. And it began to completely change and look completely different. And look at that. That's back in like what? The 95s to 2005, that decade there is when it, since then, look at the difference between 2005 to now. It's a world of difference over 2 decades from then to even now. And it is going to continue on that trajectory to where it looks nothing like it even does today.
Well, I guess, when you describe the hybrid Christians, it pretty much looks nothing like it did then, like you said. Like it's revolutionarily different. Like, so help me understand. I guess maybe you don't either. I'm genuinely baffled by someone who comes to a recognition or a realization that Jesus is not God, and blatantly admits, oh, I don't believe Jesus is God. Once you draw that conclusion, number one, it literally dissolves everything in the Bible. It brings it down to nothing. It's without Jesus being God, what bearing does the Bible have on truth at all anymore? Like that's the whole centerpiece of Scripture. Like it's just weird that you would even evoke the Bible for anything anymore once you don't believe Jesus is God. But secondly, if you don't believe Jesus is God, why do you give two shits about this guy named Jesus? What's the draw? Why are we still holding on to anything remotely related to this Christian idea if
Well,
you've
but,
already disengaged from it?
yeah, but you're looking at it. You're looking at it coming from the perspective of someone who is involved in the Reformed movement for quite some time. I mean, you and I are used to very staunch, static requirements for what would be considered orthodoxy, right? I mean, we know that. I mean, the Trinity and the hypostatic union are givens with us. But with this new breed of people, if you mention the hypostatic union, they'll look at you and they're like, "What are you talking about? I don't even know what that is." They don't care. So when you, Alan, say when you let go of the deity doctrine, what's the point at all? Well, of course, from your perspective, because you attach all of this stuff to it. But when you say that to a hybrid Christian, they don't attach all of that stuff that you do to it, so they see nothing wrong with it. It's apples and oranges. You're looking at it from your perspective and not theirs.
All right,
You have
so what is the attachment then for somebody who doesn't actually have any connection, doesn't make any of these connections? Like, if the only thing you're viewing from the Bible is that there was a man named Jesus and supposedly he was a good dude, it's no different than Muhammad being a good prophet. You've literally just plucked somebody out of history and said, I like that guy. I'm going to say he's my leader.
they would agree with you. They would say, "Oh yeah, he's probably a way as well. He's probably kind of like Jesus, and he's a spokesman for God too." They would probably say that.
Well, I guess I haven't asked them that question. I'm going to have to ask that.
Well, I have. I mean, because you know what I do. I ask, what is your approach for determining that truth? So you're telling me that Jesus is the model for what is right and what is wrong. Oh, yeah, he's the epitome of love. Okay, what brought you to that conclusion? How do you know that? Well, it always comes down to experience. That's the first thing. Well, I know in my heart because Jesus is, and whatever they say is tertiary to the main point, that it's experience. I have experienced Jesus and I just know. Okay, well, what was your other method? Well, the Bible says, okay, so experience and a source document. Yes, perfect. Let's stick with that.
But a source document that you don't even accept to be true.
Right. Or that you take willy-nilly when it comes to what is or what isn't. I mean, there's really no consistent hermeneutic at all. None. There's just kind of whatever. So you take that approach and you say, okay, so a Muslim would say they've experienced Allah in their hearts through the Prophet Muhammad, and they reference the Quran as their source document, just exactly like, oh yeah. Oh, okay. and then what do you say at that point? You're like,
well, and this is my concern that I brought up at the beginning of the episode is if you pick a source document and you basically are determining what part of that source document you like and what part you don't, essentially what you're determining, your source for determining that is yourself. Obviously,
it is.
They don't realize that. They think, oh no, I just think this is right. Well, of course you think it's right because you think it's right. That's why you think it's right, because it's what you want. Like there's no way around that. But I can't seem to get some of these guys to see that. I'm like, but there's a significant amount of danger there because you're still proclaiming that this book is some holy book and some true book that's given to us by God, even though, and here's the other baffling thing. I talked to this one guy now. He's come sort of a friend of mine, but I'm baffled by him because he doesn't even believe God exists. But then turns around and argues for the Bible and Jesus and how wonderful it is, and he can get you to some place which I'm still yet to figure out what the result of this is. What's the end game for following Jesus if he's not actually the Son of God, or he's God, or if he's going to take you to God, or if he's going to get you to heaven? There is no heaven according to this guy. It just makes your life better. I'm like, not really. You basically are deciding what you like about this guy, and you're you're placing your own desires of what you want to live by on this Jesus. Why don't you just cut out the middleman and just live your fucking life? Like, I don't understand all this hard work, this extra effort we're doing to throw our belief and our feelings and our opinions on this other dude just to make it sound like it's got more clout than it does. It's just, what are we doing here, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people they feel like they need that. They feel like they need some form of an object to worship in order to have a clear directive and a clear understanding of life and some ambiguous answers to those existential questions. I think they need that. They feel like they need that. And so that's what they do, man. They latch on to whatever it is, and they just run with it. And even in the face of unrelenting logic and rationale, they will just resort to mystery. Or, well, I know because I have experienced. And that's just what they resort to. I mean, and I don't get frustrated with it because there's no point in getting frustrated with it. It doesn't do me any good. All it does is rob me of peace when I allow that to frustrate me. I just accept it because that is what it is. And I cannot change that other than to be the voice of reason for people who are willing to have a dialogue. And most people are willing to have a dialogue for about 10 minutes, and then they are no longer willing to have a dialogue anymore. And there are some that are, but most are not. Most are not willing to have their beliefs questioned.
So what? I mean, so what do we? I'll give you a scenario. What do we do when the next Jim Jones rolls around and comes along and decides that the passages of Scripture that are most honorable for our lives and the ones that their invented God wants us to live by are the ones that teach that let's take little girls and let's use them for ourselves as sex slaves, and let's dash babies' heads against rocks, and no, I'm picking the worst examples on purpose, but it's not. I mean, it's quite literally not beyond comprehension that this could happen. We've seen this shit happen throughout
Oh
history.
yeah.
So these are not examples that are far fetched. It's quite literally possible.
Well, it happens more in the mainstream Protestant church than not these non-denominational mega churches than people realize. People will use the scriptures to justify their affairs and their porn addictions and their touching little boys, and I mean they'll use it to justify all sorts of stuff. So
sure.
it's far more prevalent than people think.
And it used it to justify slavery for many years. And then, of course, Christians love to say, "Yeah, but we also saved this." Great, but you also used the Bible to condone it for a while. So, I mean, it's a good thing you finally woke up. But now you're going against what you believe the Bible teaches, so that's even weird. But anyway, like, so what do we like? So somewhere along the line, somebody comes along and they will probably, this will happen.
Yeah.
What do you as a father do when the dude comes for your kids and is like, hey, Allah told me this, or Yahweh, or whatever the fuck his name God is, and says, this is what the Lord said, thus saith the Lord, and I have faith and he's absolutely true. Like, does it frustrate you then? Like,
well, I mean, no, because it's that person's not going to impact my life.
Well, they may if they believe that they're allowed to take your kids by force.
Well, then I would shoot them.
Well, not if there's 50 guys there with guns believing
Well,
that
I
they're
would I would shoot
qualify up.
some of them.
Yeah, well, that's true. I'm
And,
sure you would.
and I have a fully automatic AR-15 right here and a whole lot of rounds, so I promise you I could take out a bunch. But I mean, that the chances of that happening are slim, but
Possible.
yes, it's possible.
And I guess what I'm
although,
suggesting is like I really think there's got to be a way in which we help end this idea of faith before it escalates to that bullshit again.
well, I don't think you're going to be able to do that. I think that's grandiose to think that.
I guess it is.
I think what we do is we just continue to have conversations and be a part of this movement of enlightenment that is very clearly happening. There is a huge movement right now of enlightenment and a collective shifting of thinking away from all of that, which I think is going to make those examples that you gave really hard to pull off, because way too many people are wise to it now. In the past, they weren't so wise to it. Now people are going to be like, no. So, and I think in 10 years from now, I don't think that will be possible at all. I don't think people will be able to do that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making a valid point, and you're right. There is a movement going on right now, and I think it's great. And I think, I actually agree with you. I don't think it's possible to just like overnight just get rid of it as though it's a switch. I understand what you're saying, but I think the whole point I wanted to make, and we got to end the show, but I want to round this out. And I think the only point I was trying to make is, I think it's important that we include this hybrid Christian faith into our movement of discussions as well, because
I do too.
I think it's more deceptive and devastating than we may imagine if we don't be careful with it.
Well, I agree, and I do think that I think it is used in such a cavalier and flippant way that it is becoming palpable for some people, and it should not be, because I think really at the end of the day, even in its so-called syncretism of thinking, it's very exclusive. When you get down to the nitty gritty, it's very exclusive and elitist in its thinking.
Yeah. No. Well, good. I'm glad I got that off my chest and we had a chance to dialogue about it, because
well, we do discuss things and stuff, and we handle business.
That's what we did, man. That's what we did today. We flocked around and we discussed things and stuff. All right, dude. It was fun, bro. Talk to you soon, man. We'll see you next week, everybody.